So how are you feeling? Yeah? Did change mess up your flow? Change didn't mess up the flow. I'm going to ask you a couple of times, how are you feeling? It's a trick question, so I'll bring it up again later. In 1792, at the University of Oxford, Reverend Charles Wesley, my namesake, stood before a crowd to give a very powerful sermon. He entitled it, "Awake Thou That Sleepest." And in that sermon, he began to talk about our 5 physical senses and our 6th spiritual sense. He said that within each of us, when we are willing to be awakened, we experience a new birth, an inward change of our heart where we can recapture the image of the divine. He also tells us that our spiritual senses are the inlets of spiritual knowledge. And as we talk today about our senses, whether they are the physical or the spiritual, it's nothing new. You were taught in elementary school about your 5 physical senses. You have developed them over time. And you have been taught in religious and spiritual circles about your spiritual senses. And you have developed and attuned to them over time. But to what degree? Father Thomas Keating is a Trappist monk and a priest who, in his work on this planet, really got in touch with his spiritual senses by recognizing that each of our physical senses is just a representation of that which is going on inside of us. It is an outward expression of that which is happening inwardly. And the spiritual senses are these analogies, if you will, for our physical senses. They become the conduit for our awakening. And just as the physical senses are conduits for our human life and the experience thereof, our physical senses of taste, touch, sight, smell, they are all happening in this time that we call the now. But inwardly, spiritually speaking, it is a time that we have already awakened and then experience the now through taste, touch, sight, smell. And according to Father Thomas Keating, they are the sacred symbols that harness the power of who and what we are at spiritual depth. You know, we live in a universe that is full of vibration. And in New Thought circles, we often like to say that you are a human being living a spiritual existence. But deeper than that, you are a vibrational being living spiritually and humanly. Because everything is vibration. Everything is energy. It's happening all around us all the time. And everything that is energy is coming into us through our physical senses. And what happens in our human life is that we get a little stuck in the here and now, in the reality, in the moment. Because whatever it is that we are tasting or touching or smelling or seeing, whatever it is that is so right here in our awareness, we like to give more and more attention to it. Have you noticed just how important things are to you? But when you go inwardly, you realize they're not so important. those things that get your attention and you spend a lot of time with, and you begin to talk about over and over, and you begin to dwell upon and compare and defend and analyze and overanalyze and talk about it some more and write it all down and journal until you have no pencil left, and then go to your therapist and talk about it some more. It's just you vibrating on the same vibe over and over and over. And what's happening, because there is a law, it's a universal law that is called the law of attraction, what's happening is you just keep summoning that thing unto you all the more. And in that, you have begun to practice the vibration. And by practice, you begin to believe it. And by believing it, you begin to live it. And by living it, you begin to live it all the more. And without meaning to, you hold active in your vibration that which is, that reality, that now moment. And then what is hard-pressed to change. Because you're thinking about something, or even the absence of something, and all you do is keep thinking about it and keep attracting it. And if you're thinking about the absence of something, you keep getting the absence of something over and over. If you say, I'll believe it when I see it, you are focused on not seeing it. That's why in spiritual practices, we teach you or try to get you to come with us by distracting you. We want you to get off of that vibration, whether that is through prayer or meditation or whatever the case may be, to distract yourself from that thing that you've been giving all of your attention to. And just like our body, our physical body uses our 5 physical senses to distinguish the reality around us, our spiritual aspect also has 5 senses that we can develop and nurture to distinguish the spiritual reality that surrounds us and becomes one in our moment. In unity, as we look at our 5 unity principles, our 4th unity principle, that which speaks to affirmative prayer, is the very thing that can and will distract you from whatever you are giving your attention to. Unless you are just praying about that thing you don't want over and over and over. How many times have you prayed the same prayer for 20 days in a row? Wanting that thing to go away, wanting that thing to change, wanting that condition to be different. You're just giving more and more attention to it. But our power of prayer is what we believe increases or expands our awareness of something much bigger than our human attention or focus. You know, when we talk about the 5 physical senses, I was reminded of my sense of smell last night as I drove in. I was driving down the highway. It was a beautiful evening. It had rained in Tulsa, and believe it or not, in the month of July, it wasn't hot for a while. So I rolled down my windows, and I could smell a rancher cutting hay in the distance. That took me back to my childhood when I spent every summer of my life cutting and baling and hauling hay. And spiritually speaking, that is the same thing that's happening within us. When we have a sense of smell, it takes us back to a memory. It takes us back to being attentive to spirit that is hidden all around us. I couldn't see that rancher. I couldn't see where the hay was that was cut. But I had some kind of understanding that it was true. And to remember the omnipresence of the divine is just like that. It's present everywhere, all the time. Father Thomas Keating, that Trappist monk, once said, "The first experience in God and in mysticism, or as contemplative prayer, is just like perfume. You smell what you smell. If there are roses, you smell them. If God is there, you enjoy it. But if you reflect on that experience for very long, it will diminish. So you let it come and you let it go. You let it come and you let it pass. You just don't get very attached to it. Prayer is just that. It is our attraction that somehow, regardless of actual time that we spend in the moment of praying or meditating, regardless of what we're doing, because as we just sang, every thought is a prayer, regardless of the outer appearance of things, whether your prayer has become stagnant or boring or non-existent or faithful or silent or mysterious, whatever the case, if you are still in that vibration, you are still going to attract that thing, wanted or unwanted. The sense of touch is a little bit more intimate than smell. It's our heart following the scent, if you will. And the presence of God is not only this irresistible action that's happening, but through touch we are unified with something. Think about all the things you touch throughout your day. Think about the hugs that you give and receive. Think about every time you touch your own skin. You become one with it. You leave your DNA there, and DNA is left on you. Germaphobes just went like that. And sometimes we are touched in ways that are painful or scary. And being able to feel pain, even if it is a vibration of suffering, that too is critical to our life. Because though we don't always want to touch those things or be touched by someone, we didn't come here to experience only the joy and the good. We came here to experience it all, the contrast. Otherwise, you wouldn't know what the joy and the good was all about. The natural response to touching a hot stove is to repel from it really quickly, to move to that ice water or the ice cube. Many of us are doing that spiritually, inwardly, when we don't feel like we are in alignment. Are you going to stay there and keep your hand on the stove, or are you going to be distracted and go find something that soothes and calms you? A lot of us feel alone as we wander about doing our daily tasks, our chores, our responsibilities, but the most powerful touches that we encounter along the way are those things that seem unplanned. Have you noticed? Those encounters that are unrehearsed and they arrive unannounced. And when we risk leaning into them, we open up. When we risk being open, being touched, being vulnerable, if we don't allow that, we are not allowing the change that our life experience requires of us. And the same is true when we allow the world to invite us into that mysterious territory called our humanness. Our sense of touch helps us explore our world and make meaning of it. Father Thomas Keating said this about taste. The most intimate of the mystical experiences seems to be taste, in which we receive, so to speak, the kiss of God in our inmost being. Spirit, which is the most sweet kiss, pours into our inmost being the fire, the light, the life, the love, the unconditional and infinite. For it is the ultimate source of creation and the universe. The psalmist wrote about that all the time. Oh, taste and see the goodness of God. One of my dear friends, her name is Joan. Joan is a, how would I say? Got to be really careful. She may listen to this later. Joan is a professional workshopper. How's that? She goes to workshops all the time on everything. And she went to a workshop about taste and how to eat. Now that sounded a little odd to me, but okay, whatever. Well, as she went and did that thing, and she came back, I have to tell you, going to dinner with Joan today is a whole different experience post-workshop. Because Joan got in touch with her sense of taste to a degree by which dinner becomes this celebration, this life force unto its own. It takes hours for Joan to eat dinner now. She takes every bite and vibrates with it, and until she feels that her body is ready to receive it, she just holds it there. When she eats it, she just slowly chews and savors and notices her taste buds coming alive, and she just continues to be in that place of gratitude. I used to like going to dinner with Joan. Now, when I have time to go to dinner with Joan, it's like this theater happening right in front of me, watching her. But you know what? She simply slowed down. How many times are we eating on the go? In our car, over the sink, in bed, wherever it is that we're just hurry, hurry, hurry. But if we slow down, which is the very thing that prayer and meditation really is the symbol of, stilling our thoughts, slowing down, calming us, we become one again with that thing, that person, that place that we are wanting to hold. Taste is a way in which the presence of the divine becomes a reality to us, through us, by us. You know, for my Catholic friends and some Protestants, it can be known as the sacraments of taking communion, the wine and the cracker. For others, it could be the coffee and donuts at fellowship time. For some, it might be, in our Jewish faith, it might be the karaset, which is the time of the Seder or the Passover. For my friends who are Muslim coming out of Ramadan, it's the taste of the ghee, the taste of the divas. For others, it's a wine bar in the sanctuary on luau night. Whatever the case may be, it is a time in which we take inwardly the out. How many of you grew up having that thought, having that phrase, "You are what you eat"? It's true. It's also true in a spiritual sense. You are what you are taking in. And that sense of taste is given to us for the sheer enjoyment of life. Do you know we don't need to taste in order to eat? If you've ever lost your taste, you know that to be true. It's just not as much fun. When I had chemo, I lost my taste buds. My sense of taste was off. I still gained weight. I'm the only person in the world who gained weight on chemo because I kept trying to taste things. But it is our craving or our passion that arises from nowhere and continues to be persistent and relentless until it is fed. That was really good. Someone write that down. I'm going to use that as a Facebook post. Prayer is tasting spirit with our heart. You just heard some great music. You just heard laughter. Our sense of hearing Reminds me of centuries ago when monks and nuns would begin to chant their prayers, to read their scripture aloud. And they would do it over and over repetitively. As they did that, they moved from the conscious experience of the words to the subconscious experience of the words, to the meaning behind the words. And they did that in order to expand their capacity of knowing what was being said, what had been written, what was being felt. If you ever lost yourself in a song, you know what that means, how that feels. When you close your eyes and you just allow those words and the music to play through you, as you, and you stop listening for someone to be off key, you stop listening for the guitar in the background, you just start listening instead with your heart and feeling it vibrate within you. And no longer are you listening with your ears. And through listening, rather than just through hearing, you begin to surrender and even dance in your seat. Many years ago, the old-fashioned guidance system to keep airplanes on course helps us understand our capacity for listening inwardly. When the pilot was on course and he had his headphones on, when he was on course, he heard nothing in his headphones. But when he, and I keep saying he because back then, when he would veer to the right, he would hear a beep. When he would veer the other way, he would hear a different signal. But when he would get back on course, it was silent again. And by correcting his course and returning to the silence, in that moment-by-moment process of our daily life, there are similar indications of being on or off our course. It's not that we're hearing those signals and those indications by our physical ears, but by our spiritual sense of listening. Mother Teresa said, "In the silence of the heart, God speaks. And if you face God in prayer and silence, you will hear him. Then you will know you are nothing." She goes on to say, "It is only when you realize your nothingness, your emptiness, that God can fill you and you become everything." That still gives me chills. I think Keating and Mother Teresa were lunatics and didn't know it. For the last year and a half, I have been preaching every first Sunday at a small church in Tulsa, and the piano player there is blind. And it's interesting because here I come and I'm with wonderful, incredible musicians. And there I go and I watch this man being led to the piano and led to his seat, and everything is kind of done around him. And when it's time to start, someone taps him on the shoulder and he begins to play because he can't see the clock. You see, I sit at that piano and I can see the notes. Doesn't mean I can always read them, but I can see them. But Mark, that music minister, he knows them before the page is ever presented. He mentally discerns the music. He's inwardly connected. He writes songs in the moment. He said, "You can put a song set in front of me, but I'm not going to see it, so how about I just listen and pay attention and get into the flow of it?" And it's great. It's perfect every time. Our Unity co-founder, Charles Fillmore, said this: "The power to see in spirit is peculiar to our faith. It is, in its outer expression, this power of sight, but inwardly it is that which perceives the reality of the substance of spirit. Mental seeing is knowing." Mental seeing is knowing. And that spiritual sense of seeing is our capacity to discern the reality of spirit. Our capacity for seeing requires us to rest in that stillness of prayer or meditation, whatever practice or ritual or sacrament. It's our time to wait for an opening of our heart. You know, the mystical paradox is that we are to perceive this reality of spirit, as Charles Fillmore said, we need first to be looking for it. And when seeing spirit, it becomes empowered in us, whether it's with this sight or with this sight. I hope you will take today's daily word and read it again. It's on the front of your bulletin. It talks about the intuition, the wisdom, the understanding, the grace, the discernment, the power within to keep you on course. It is a power. That thing called intuition is not just represented in mothers, it is represented in all of us. Proverbs speaks to that spiritual sense of intuition when it says, "You will understand and find the knowledge of God, but only when you go inward." You know, I've never believed that prayer changes things, but I am a great believer that prayer changes me. And then what I see and hear and taste and touch and experience in all ways changes from my new perspective of me, of who and what I am as God or Spirit moving in and through and as me. And just as each of our physical senses broadens that depth and texture of our physical life, so do our spiritual senses awaken and draw focus and experience to all that is. You are not a being that just came here to be. Isn't that good to know? You're also not a doing that just came here to do. You are this powerful, sensory perceiving being that is always expanding, and that's why everything was established the way it is. What you're thinking about right now from your now moment, your reality, what you're thinking about from your human perspective or personality or mood or attitude is what we call the point of attraction. You become the point in which that vibration comes alive. And you get exactly what you think about, whether you like it or not. And you live in a universe that is attraction-based, with no exception, no exclusion. Which means when you see or taste or touch or hear or smell something that you like and you say, yes, I like that thing, I want more of it, you will get more of it. And when you see or taste or touch or smell or hear something that you don't like and you say, no, I don't want any more, the same law applies. You get more of it because you are still on that vibration. You are still becoming one with it. There is not a word in our vocabulary that really means no. Even the word no doesn't mean no. It means yes, because you attract more of that thing. There's no such thing as no, especially in a universe that is built on attraction. I'm about to channel Abraham any moment. It's true. When you are in that vibration and you yell no at it, whether it's a person, place, or thing in your life, guess what? It's still coming. When there's somebody in your life that has a personality that annoys you and you give your attention to it, even if you don't want to talk about it, you keep it active in your vibration, and that person usually is going to give you more of it because it's active in your vibration, and the law of attraction says that which you are giving your attention to is growing. And you have the wherewithal to feel the path of most allowance. Abraham would call that the path of least resistance. But it really is the same thing. It's the path of most allowance. Did you ever play the hot and cold game when you were a kid? Did you teach your grandkids how to play it? You'd hide something, have them close their eyes or put a blindfold on and tell them, go find it. And you become the guide that says, you're getting warmer, you're getting warmer, you're getting warmer, you're almost there, oh, you're hot, you're hot. Or you're getting colder, you're freezing. Remember that game? It is the same. Someone hides something, they tell you whether you're getting warmer or colder. It's the relationship of spirit or our intuition or our wisdom or whatever name you want to give it that says you're on course or you're off. You're getting closer to it in physical proximity by the simple warmer, colder, by the intuition, by the wisdom, by the knowing, by the experience, by the feeling, by the taste, touch, smell of spirit. Your own guidance system functions just like that. The source within you knows where you were, who you are, who you have become, and beyond that. And that source within you, though some religions would say it never changes, that God is static and a presence and a power and a principle, I understand that and I agree with most of it, except that in the Trinity, that which is spirit is always changing because it's always moving. And we are ushered into that by becoming the hands and feet of that which we call God, always moving in and through and as us. So how are you feeling? How are you feeling? Is it only with this and this and this and this? Or can you go here and feel your way from here? There are lots of things that don't make sense at first when only the physical senses are used. So what does your heart say about that person, place, or thing that you have been so focused on? What does your heart say about that thing or person or circumstance or situation or condition that you so wish would change? Every once in a while, someone great comes along who instinctively trusts their inner sense more than their physical, the unseen more than the seen, whose life insights are so piercing that they kind of blow the entire model of spiritual evolution to smithereens. Just like that blind piano player who just uses every key without being able to see it, hears every note without being able to see it. Rumi once said, silence is an ocean. Speech is a river. When the ocean is searching for you, don't walk into the waters of the river. Just begin to listen for the ocean and go that way. It really is that simple to get into the flow. And it really is that hard to get into the flow. It's all one law, though. Whichever you're giving your attention to, the getting into the flow or the not being in the flow is what's going to happen. And just like a river seeks out the sea, you too are seeking out the ocean. That's what your soul is craving. That's what your spirit is wanting to be fed. And so through prayer and meditation, just allow yourself to put on what we call the mind of Christ. Allow yourself to awaken, as Charles Wesley once said, to that greater understanding of the indwelling divinity within you. I think it was Rumi who also said, you are not a drop in the ocean, but you are the entire ocean in a drop. All of us, as mortal human beings, are going to taste death. but only some of us are ever going to taste life. All of us as human beings and doings are going to hear music, but only some of us are going to sway and dance. All of us are going to touch or be touched, but only some of us will allow that experience to awaken our oneness and connect with it. All of us can smell the rain, but only some of us will still be standing there to experience the fragrance of the air after the rain. And if you look around right now, all of us can see beauty, but only some of us will ever notice that it is simply a reflection of who and what we are. Thank you for having me. God bless.